What is up, everyone? Welcome to It's Been a Week. I'm your host, Ben McDonald, and this is your weekly dose of whatever the hell just happened. Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Been a Week. I had a pretty decent week. For any of you that listened to the episode with my personal trainer, I talked about doing these body scans where I have to go in, you lay on this machine. It pretty much looks like an MRI machine without like the top on it. And you have to sit super still, and this thing like scans your whole body, and it literally will tell you like how much fat and muscle you have in each leg, in each arm, in your midsection, how much your bones weigh. It tells you all this shit, right? So my trainer makes me go every few months, I guess, to see the progress. And I went in for a scan this week, and it was not great. Now, I think that might have something to do with, and I didn't tell my trainer this, and he's probably going to listen to this and then kick my ass. I had a friend in town the night before I went to the scan, and we may have drank a bottle of red wine. So the results of the scan, I have a feeling they weren't fully accurate because I feel like, I don't know, I was probably retaining water. I just think the wine may have altered the results, because here's the deal. The results weren't great. Now, they weren't horrible, but they weren't like really great. I may have gained a pound or two of fat. You know, it's okay. But again, I think that was because I was retaining water. I definitely think I need to go in and do a new scan here in a few weeks, because when I gave the results to my trainer, I mean, it wasn't good. He made me do like 17 minutes on that fucking rower machine. It was bullshit. But you know, I'm used to being in trouble. I've been in trouble my whole life. I'm growing up, going to school, I was always in trouble. I remember in middle school, I'd always get in trouble because I missed a lot of school. And it was because I was barrel racing. I was racing horses. I don't know. School wasn't my top priority. And so I would miss a lot of school. And I had this one teacher. His name was Mr. Hank. I think his full name was Gabe Hank. He was my 8th grade history teacher. And he was this like short, stocky, probably suffered from a little bit of little man syndrome type of teacher. And I remember I was going to a race one time, and I was like, oh, I think there was a quiz or a test on Friday. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be gone on Friday. And he goes, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to a horse race. And he literally said to me in front of the whole class, he goes, what is this, like a Brokeback Mountain situation? Could you imagine a teacher now saying that to a kid, like that, making it in comparison to Brokeback Mountain because you ride horses? I mean, I wish I had the wit and the personality that I have now, because I for sure would have snapped back at him with something good. But you know, I was fucking in 8th grade. I wasn't as quick on my toes as I am now. I also got in a lot of trouble. I went to a Catholic school, and I'm not even Catholic, and my family's not Catholic. But when we moved to this new town, the public school my mom wanted me to go to, the open enrollment had closed. So she's like, shit. So she was, well, we'll just send him to the Catholic school. So when we went there, my mom's like, tell him you're fucking Catholic. And I'm like, copy that. Go to school. I don't know. I didn't know this shit, but I was like, whatever, religion, woo. And I'll never forget, like every Wednesday in school, we had to go to church. And so I'm just trying to like follow along. Like I know what the fuck's going on. And I thought like first communion was just like the first time you take communion. So like I went in, I was like, woo woo, first communion. And they're like, what? I didn't realize there was like a whole process to first communion. Like you need to get, I don't know, you're supposed to take like some fucking classes. I don't know, maybe be baptized. I don't know, accept Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior. I don't know. Whatever the rules were, I didn't follow them. So I was like, whoopee, sorry. And then they made us go to confession. And I was like, oh, shit. So we had to go into like, it was like you go in like what you see in the movies. Like you go, what is those things called? The confessional. And I go in there, and I had written down, like I had a notebook. I had pages. I mean, I had done some shit. So I was like, I was confessing everything. I'm bringing it out. I'm like, I did this. I stole this. I've, done some naughty things with this person. And the priest like peeks around the corner, and I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't think you're supposed to be doing that. And you're not supposed to look at me. And he literally says to me, after I've read like 2 pages worth of my fucking sins, he's like, why don't you just say for everything that wasn't mentioned? And I go, are you fucking kidding me? I could have come in here and just said, sorry for hitting my sister. Oh, and everything that wasn't mentioned. And I wouldn't have had to admit all the shit I fucking have done. Are you joking? So I was like, all right. So the first few years at the old Catholic school wasn't meshing so well. And then I remember at one point, I don't know what the fuck I did. I'm sure because I would question everything, right? I was always like, this doesn't make sense. And at this school, like, we didn't have nuns, but these teachers were fucking bitches. But like, you didn't question the religion. They taught it to you and you had to, that's what it was. And I was like, I don't know about that. So a few times they sent me to the principal's office. And I remember I went to the principal, I sit down, her name was Miss Mitchell. And she looked at me and she was like, well, you're going to go to hell. And I said, what? I go, girl, you think I'm going to hell with you're sitting here with that lesbian ass haircut? I mean, she had like buzzed hair. I'm like, please. So then I was kindly asked to leave the school, which I guess, in hindsight was probably for the best. Religion is an interesting topic. And I feel like, where my mom always told me the 2 topics you don't bring up at a party is politics and religion. But religion to me, look, I do not consider myself a very religious person. I believe in a higher power. Do I believe that Jesus was the Son of God? I don't know. But we're going to talk about that today. Because my next guest, his name is Lee. I've known Lee for like over 15 years. He is you're going to hear in this interview, I asked to be religious, and he's like, I don't really love that word. So like a man of faith. He's very knowledgeable. And ever since I've known him, he's kind of he's stayed consistent, right? Like he's been a very faithful person and he continues to do that. He used to be a youth pastor. He preaches a lot of things. So I was like, okay, for me, I got questions. Shit don't make sense to me. So It's Been a Week is meant to be a very funny podcast where we can all sit here and have real conversations. And sometimes to have a real conversation and sometimes to laugh at the shit in life, sometimes you got to deal with it. And in this episode, I very unexpectedly, I get emotional because I guess I'm still processing and dealing some shit that I didn't even know I was still dealing with. And that's, I think, what makes us all human, right? So in this episode, there are some stories that come up that are part of my past, that are part of my story, and that I think that are important to help people understand. And if there's someone that's going through something similar, hopefully this can help them. Hopefully this is something someone can relate to and maybe be like, okay, I'm not alone. So I was very intentional on not bringing the names into this of the other people, because that's not what this is about. This is not about making them look bad. This is not about trying to pin people against each other. This is none of that. So I just wanted to tell my story, and sometimes telling my story involves some, shitty things that happened in the past. And that's just what it is. I know last week I did call someone out by name, and that was very intentional. But this is not going to be a podcast where I'm just sitting here calling out people and, causing enemies and stirring the pot. That's not what this is. But this week, I just think it was important to tell the truth. I wanted to have this conversation with someone that's like level-headed and that you can actually have a decent conversation with. And this episode is not meant to rile anyone the fuck up. So everyone just calm down. I'm not sitting here trying to convince anyone not to believe in Jesus. I am not doing this podcast to make people try to believe in Jesus. I'm not trying to change anyone's religious views whatsoever. All I want to do is I got questions. I want to try to get some answers. Whether that's going to change my mind or my belief system, I don't know. I don't think so. Because I'm to me, I have a lot of friends that are Jewish. I have friends that are atheist. I have some friends that are Muslim. Like, I have friends from all different walks of life, all different religions. And I'm like, everyone can believe in their own thing. Just my opinion. Again, I don't need all the Christians or all the people coming at me and freaking out. This podcast episode is not an invitation for people to fucking start sending me their sermons and their verses and trying to, calm down. Whoa. Okay. So this next episode is just an open conversation. I just want to have, just get answers, just talk about it. Everyone just fucking sit down and relax. I'm very excited for you guys to meet Lee. He's an awesome guy. I think this was a great conversation. I'm excited for you guys to hear it. So here we go. Lee, welcome to It's Been a Week. How's your week been?
It has been pretty good. Yeah. Nothing catastrophic yet. So far, so good.
For everyone who doesn't know, Lee and his wife, Hallie, they breed, train, compete barrel horses pretty much all over the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the biggest races. Pretty much the highest caliber you could be in barrel racing is what they do, day in and day out.
It is what we do day in, day out. That is a very true statement.
So today we're going to talk about religion. And I think when I decided I wanted to do an episode on religion, you really were the first person that came to mind. You've always been, would you say religious? Is that the right word?
We'll probably get into that. I don't love
that
the
word
religion. I would say I follow Jesus. I am a man of faith. Religion is kind of a dicey word for me.
Okay, so a man of faith. And I think you've been that since, like I said, since I've met you. You've kind of walked that walk. You've lived that truth, and you've been consistent in that, which is why I want to have this conversation with you, A, because I also respect you. And I think that you are able to have this conversation with a level mind. And this, it's not like this is some heated conversation.
I hope not.
No.
It might be.
Could be. I think I want to start just by starting with where I currently am in my belief system, what currently I believe, and then we can kind of dissect it and go from there. For me, I believe, I for sure believe that there is a higher power, whether you call that God, the universe, spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it. I definitely think there is a higher being. What I struggle with is sometimes, like, the Bible was written by man and not written by Jesus or by God. And I always try to, I think of it as, for instance, the most recent movie I've seen is Wicked. I think it's one of my new favorite movies. I've seen it 12 times. I'm obsessed with it. Love everything about it. I think there's so many deeper meanings to the movie. I think there's surface meanings. I think it's similar to like with when Barbie came out. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. Some people saw deeper meanings. Some didn't. And for me, the Bible, I feel like it's like a movie. You read it and everyone's going to interpret it a different way. Everyone's going to apply it to their life a different way. People are going to think that things mean a certain thing, or they might think it means something else. So I also think it's like, because the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, it's stories from all different types of people. And I could sit here and tell you a story. You can then, when your wife gets home, tell her. She could go tell her best friend. Her best friend can tell her mom. And they could come back to me. And that story, by the time it gets back to me, might be a completely different story. Like that story could have changed. It's not even the same story. It's like the old game of telephone. And I also think that there's like language has changed. Like I even think when I grew up in the 90s, we used to always go, "Oh, that's so gay." Language has changed. Like literally back then, that was normal. When you didn't like something, you go, "That's so gay." Whereas like I don't think I've heard someone say that
right
in years. So I struggle with thinking that the Bible is just like the end all be all. And I also think for me, I'm like, I don't need a book to tell me how to be a good person. I know when I'm a good person or when I'm being an asshole. I use this example I was explaining to a friend. When you go to the grocery store, and this has happened to me before in my life, where they forget to scan the case of water you have on the bottom of the cart.
Sure.
Have there been times in life where you don't say anything and you just walk out to the car and then you go out there and I go, that was bad. Like I just stole that. I know deep down that was wrong. That was bad, but I don't need a book to tell me that was bad. I get it. So I think I guess I struggle when there's, people, they look at the Bible and they think it's just, this is the way it is. This is what it is. And it's so black and white and in stone, when it's like a lot of the language, it's been translated. It's also people's stories and interpretations. It's not like this was actually written by God. Here you go. Here's your manual on life. Like, so I've dated a lot of Jewish people, and I really, like, I've learned, I don't know everything about Judaism. They believe Jesus was a real person. he was an amazing person, but was he actually the son of God? I'm like, that's where I think I question that.
Good question. It's good to question.
Yeah, Mary was the mother of God, right? Like, how do we know that, like, she really had the son of God?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, let's back up a little bit. I think a lot of the things that you said are, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to think that way. I think many Christians, including myself, when you talk about the Bible, I think the Bible is just like the book that you and I have been discussing a little bit that we'll get into, has been widely misused and grossly misunderstood for generations and generations for many of the reasons that you just named. But I myself believe that the Bible is the inerrant word of God, meaning it was written without error. Now, what has happened with the scriptures and with the Bible, I was on the phone with a friend today just talking about some of the issues. I've been trying to walk with Jesus for 22 years now. Really, I mean, I grew up in church my whole life, and but really I wouldn't say I really became a man of faith until I was 21 years old, and that's maybe another podcast for another story. But so 42 now, and so actually I think I'm 41, but for a better part of 20 years, been trying to walk with Jesus. And one of the things I've been unpacking after going through seminary, being a pastor for 10 years, being a missionary, just what Western Christianity has turned into. And as a result, I think what they've turned the Bible into for some people. And I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of that. And the way that Christians have used the Bible to, support their agenda or shame people or affirm choices that they want to make that really maybe wouldn't be what Jesus would want for them. And so, the way that the Bible has been interpreted over the years, I think, has been misused and misunderstood. But there are a lot of Christians that do believe, like myself, that, it was written in its original context without error. And I think for me, as I choose to walk with Jesus, I do look to the scriptures and look to the Bible. And I really do my best to base my life and my decisions off of what the Bible teaches me.
But like if they are stories though written by other people, like that, you believe those, like there wasn't error or change, or there wasn't, maybe someone, skewed their story a little bit or embellished it. Because when I tell stories all the time, I mean, I get called out for exaggerating all the time.
Have you seen the TikTok with the woman comedian that talks about how she's the dazzler and her husband's this boring details person?
Oh, no.
I'm going to have to show it to you. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that those stories are embellished. And I don't think that they are broken. Now, with that said, I do think there are language barriers for some people. And not that the stories have been changed by any means, but that I think sometimes they're taken out of context. They're not understood.
Right.
And when you really study the scriptures in the original Hebrew and Greek, I think you'd be surprised to realize how many passages don't really mean what you think they mean at face value. Or if you take one section of scripture out of context, like if you cherry pick is what we call it, a verse, and you don't read the entire book of Genesis, you don't understand the context. You don't understand what came before it. You don't understand what came after it. And therefore you take this little piece of scripture or this story and it seems out of context, out of place, doesn't make sense. And so
it's like people take little snippets and be like, see, this is wrong, but like they're not getting the full story.
Yes, I do think that happens often.
But because I just think like I was saying before, like, saying like that's gay, like that terminology that we use, that was only 25 years ago we used that. So the Bible being thousands of years ago, like words might not have meant the same thing. Like you're not seeing in the Bible, so-and-so was twerking. Like twerking wasn't even a word. That wasn't even a thing. But like now we have, language evolves, it changes, things mean different things. Like how do we know what they actually meant by their words, I guess?
But that's what I keep saying. And I do feel like you're really hung up on these specific stories. In its original context, I do believe that the Bible was written without error. And so there are a ton of great resources for people that want to know more about it. One of them I think of is The Case for Christ. And there was this lawyer who was an atheist, and he was set out to disprove Christianity and specifically the story of Christ, and went into just a hardcore, very scientific research mode of like, I am going to prove this wrong. And was completely transformed with the information that he found on how historically accurate so much of the Bible was and is. And so there are a lot of great resources if you want to dig into it more. And it has been, I have to apologize. I am no longer, it's weird for me to say that I'm not a pastor anymore, because I think I'll always be a pastor.
Right.
I have not been employed professionally to be a pastor. And so, I call it apologetics, about like the details of the inerrancy of Scripture and some of the questions you may have. I hope I don't fall short, but it's been probably 12 years since I've been out of seminary, and some of these things I don't freshen up on as much as I should.
Oh, of course. But like, okay, so Mary had Jesus, the Son of God.
We're back to Mary.
I asked a friend this question. I was like, what if Mary was just sleeping around, and like then she was quick on her feet? Like maybe Mary was like, I don't want to get stoned to death for cheating, so like she thought quick and was like, oh, Son of God. And my friend goes, well, that's kind of having faith. Like that's believing, the faith. And I was like, okay. And I said, okay, let's go down that path. And I said, if Jesus came back today, like say he shows up, would we believe that it's Jesus?
I think that if you've ever read through the book of Revelation,
that's a no.
It's going to be pretty clear when Jesus comes back. It's actually one of my favorite stories in Revelation chapter 19, about what he looks like when he comes back. And I actually think I wrote about it the other day on Facebook. The story goes in Revelation chapter 19, it says, behold, he was on a white horse.
Oh, nice.
Also interesting, yes. And the very first words that he uses to describe Jesus when he comes back, he calls him faithful and true. And that's always stuck out to me, because there are so many things in this world that haven't felt faithful or true. And I'm sure you've experienced that as well.
Yeah.
And so I've always loved that story of Jesus coming back, when it talks about him being faithful and true. Everything he said he was going to do, he really did. And everything he said he really was. And so that was kind of a side tangent. But everything, I think when Jesus comes back, it's going to be pretty clear.
But like if he comes back and he's not, I mean, I don't know the story, but if let's say he decides to not, if he just comes back and is like, here I am, do you think people would believe him, or are we going to be like, you're crazy, you're not Jesus, prove it?
If that's the way that it goes, I think a lot of people will think he's crazy.
And if we say prove it, it's like, well, if you're making him prove it, then where's your faith?
Yeah. There's an old argument that, Jesus was either a lunatic, a liar, or the Lord. Like he was either crazy, he was either just a compulsive liar, or he really was who he says he was. And that is faith. I mean, to decide from those
which one it's going to be.
Which one is he?
That's interesting. So I want to shift, because like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I haven't read, I went.
Can we be done talking about Mary?
We can be done with Mary. we can leave her just how it came to be.
God bless Mary.
It is what it is. Yes. I went to Awana's as a kid, like every Wednesday night.
Yeah, you did.
I went to a Catholic school, even though I wasn't Catholic.
Me too.
I guess God, religion, the Bible, it's always been around in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was like, you believe in it and you do. Like growing up in school, I was like, this is what you do. Like you don't question that. You don't, this is, because when you're a kid and you're in school, that's what they're teaching you. So you just go with it. And so that's what I was saying. Have I read the Bible? No. Have I been around it? Yes. But what I can say, to shift kind of the gear a little bit, is that as a gay person, the amount of judgment, hate, like scare tactics that I've witnessed personally, but I've also seen a ton of other people witness. Like I struggle with how someone's going to claim to be Christian and then hate someone else so much.
I don't know what else to say to that other than so do I. And I'm so sorry. And I hope I've never made you feel that way.
No, never. You actually stuck up for me. But because the book we were just reading, this UnClobber, I found it very interesting when he said there's 31,000 verses, give or take, I think a little more, in the Bible. And there's 6 of them that mention homosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And and when I say Christians, I'm not saying everyone. I'm a lot, or people I've experienced in my experience. a lot of them really latch on to those 6 verses. And there's so many other things in the Bible. I mean, if from what I was seeing, it's like women are supposed to be submissive to their husbands, not eat shellfish, not wear woven clothing. There's all these things. So it's like, how can we just focus on these 6 verses, which he was starting to dissect, don't actually all even mean, what, I mean, I think one of the ones he said was like, with the men sleeping with other men, it's like they used to rape other men to show dominance. It wasn't like 2 people who loved each other and it was consensual. It was like a vicious, like animalistic.
It was the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. So like, how are we grabbing that and then being like, oh yeah, see, the gays are going to hell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as you're obviously and painfully aware, I think the the topic of homosexuality has been such a hot topic in the church. And I'm glad that you were able to decipher, and I heard you say it because I was thinking about that, just getting ready to talk to you about it, that I am so sorry that you have felt hurt by the church. And I'm so sorry to anyone in the gay community that has felt hurt by the church. But I'm glad that you were able to decipher, and I hope anyone listening can decipher also. I mean, it'd be like me going to a barrel race and having a bad interaction with one person and saying, I was hurt by the barrel racing community.
Right.
And the point of me drawing, it's a poor analogy, especially with the topic at hand. But my point is that I want you to know, and the rest of the gay community that might be listening, that has been hurt by the church, that is not a definitive statement about how all Christians feel towards the gay community. That is absolutely not a definitive statement on how all pastors, churches feel about the topic of homosexuality whatsoever. It absolutely is some people's, and it is some churches and some pastors and some denominations. But I think there is a shift coming, and that we've been watching, just where a lot of people are learning more, myself included.
Right.
This book has been so good to read. With the book we're talking about is UnClobber by Colby Martin. It's a great book. I was talking to a friend of mine, Kyle Jackson. I'm sure he'll listen to this podcast. He's a pastor in Minneapolis, and I had asked him, I was just telling him about this conversation I was going to have with my friend, and he told me to read this book. And the tagline of the book is Rethinking Our Misuse of the Bible on Homosexuality. And he talks about how Christians have clobbered the gay community with these 6 passages. And he kind of unpacks them and goes back to, like we were talking, the original Hebrew and Greek language, and what was around those passages, the context of the passages, the culture, what was happening in the time that those passages were written. And, I don't know that I'm in a place where I'm going to say I agree or disagree with exactly what he found, but he poses great arguments that open your eyes to, gosh, maybe there is a different way to read this story.
Right.
Maybe I don't fully understand what this says.
Like Wicked.
Exactly. Which I was laughing when do you know how many times I saw Wicked in the theater?
I love Wicked.
I bet I saw it probably 15 or so times. We had an apartment across the street from the Orpheum.
Oh, the play, actual play.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they would do the lottery, and you could go and you would put your name in a hat, and then me and my buddies, we'd just go out to eat or whatever. And then you'd get a front row seat for like $20.
Yeah.
And so we saw it all the time. And so I'm with you. I think there's a lot of redemptive threads, throughout that music, and the music's phenomenal. I love that.
Have you seen the movie?
I did. Hallie and I went and saw it when it came out. We saw it down here at Film Alley.
It's so good.
It was good.
But I think that relates to like what you're saying is, you're like, do I agree 100%? No, but it does pose a different, maybe, and that was actually the whole reason for this episode, is I don't want people to listen and think I'm trying to convince people not to believe in Jesus, or that this is all podcast is just, you have to believe in Jesus. I just want this to be where people can listen and be like, maybe see it from a different lens, someone else's perspective, and just put it in your wheelhouse of a different way to think about it, not trying to change anyone's mind or,
Right. And I don't think, as a pastor, it was never my goal, and still as a Jesus follower, it's not my goal to change your mind. I mean, I don't think that's my job. I mean, that's Jesus's job, to change your heart and mind if that's what he has for you. And if you're open to it. And if you're not, then, I love you. I care about you. I always have, and I always will. I think where you get into trouble is when people's agendas become to change your mind. And I just have never really been interested in changing anyone's mind.
I think right now, I mean, obviously there's, the LGBT, but like particularly right now with the way the, the world's going, people who are transgender, people who are non-binary. They, to me right now, feel more attacked than I would say the gay community at the moment. How is someone like that? Like, what would be your advice? Like, if I had a transgender friend, for me to tell them, oh, you should go to a church. Like, how would they even know where? Because you said some pastors are more accepting, some religions are more accepting. Like, what would be your advice to tell someone where to even start to look where they're not just going to get rejected? Because let me tell you, like, from someone who's been rejected and shunned and judged, it's not like a fun path to go down.
Yeah, sure. I don't really know other than, all churches now have websites, Facebook pages. I mean,
Right.
I think you can catch the drift when you check out their social media presence, the things that they post. And a lot of affirming churches usually have like a rainbow of some sort, in their...
We accept you.
Yeah, but really,
Yeah.
I mean, just as a poster, you know what I mean, for people like you're mentioning, like, hey, I don't have anywhere to go, but I'm wrestling with my faith, and I need to know if this is a safe place. And I do think most affirming churches put that out there. I don't really want to get into ones to stay away from. It's not really my place. I think if you look hard enough, I mean, there are churches for you where you will find a place.
You'll
Absolutely.
find it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think because this phrase that always was told to me, and I think it's such bullshit, was the love the sinner, hate the sin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, fuck off. Like that's like saying, oh, I love you, I just hate everything you are and who you are and what you want to be. Like, I was told that by multiple, there's people in particular, and it's just like, well, I'll always love you, but won't love anything of who you are.
Right.
Like that phrase to me, you're acting like I'm a killer, where it's like, if you're, I love my kid, but they killed, like, what? How can you put that in the same category? To me, I think that is just, I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do too. Why not just say the first part of that?
Love the sinner.
Yeah.
Because really, we're all sinners.
How about just love people?
Just love.
How about we could just leave it at that? You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And it goes back to my point. Like, I've never wanted to have an agenda with people other than, I mean, I am unashamed. I do want people to know Jesus. I do. But I also, the people that I've been around the most that wanted me to love Jesus, I watched their life. I saw how they lived their life. And I thought to myself, whatever it is they have, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more contagious to me than anything they said or told me or information they provided me with. And I watched these people live their lives for Jesus that really meant it and really knew Jesus. And that was so attractive to me. And I guess, whether I've done that or not, or done a good job at that, that's always been more my, you can call it a ministry philosophy. I mean, I do. I want to love people. I want to care about them. I want to be invested in their lives. And I just want to show up for people,
right.
And the rest is between you and God.
And that goes back to when I was saying in the beginning, how I was like deep, to the grocery store on the water, when you're doing something wrong deep down.
Hopefully
you should, if you
I
have,
don't know that everybody does.
Maybe not everyone, but in general, I would like to believe people have a decent moral compass. We're like
most people.
So for me, I have my partner, AJ. We love each other. We love other people. We love our friends. So I'm like, how can you put this like, all we're doing is love, literally love. That is it. We're not hurting anybody. We're not doing all, these, whatever people think is such a big sin. So that's where my coming out story, I never had like a coming out event. I was actually...
But you love events.
I love events. I would love, I love a moment. I'm surprised I didn't. It would have been a huge party. But no, I mean,
should have one
now.
I think you should.
Just to clear it up in case anyone was wondering or questioning, I'm coming out. I mean, no, I was kind of forced out of the closet, by my family before I was ready. And
is that why you got kicked out of the house?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like my dad, who he was my stepdad, but he legally adopted me. He was in my life since I was like 4. So I called him dad. He was my dad. When he found out I was gay, I mean, he held a gun to my head and then in his other hand had a baseball bat. And he told me, you have 10 minutes to get your shit and get out. So I had 10 minutes to scramble my life together, get everything I owned and get the fuck out of there. As I was, literally this man that has been in my life since I was 4 has a baseball bat ready to beat me and a gun. So at that time, I gathered whatever I could. And the only place I knew where to go, there was this family that was helping me with training horses and, mentoring me and all that kind of stuff. And I went there to live with them. And that was, I would say, looking back, the biggest turnoff to religion, or the biggest, I don't know, I felt tricked. I felt lied to. And then it was, that when I moved there, I was like, they were feeding me. I had horses there. They were paying all my bills because I had nothing. So I felt very indebted to them, I need to earn my keep. I would keep the house clean. I would clean stalls. I think they tried to have me do a little lawn work, but you can't be good at everything. So that was a one and done. But I was riding horses. I was trying to earn my keep and at this time I wasn't speaking to my family, only to find out that they had actually gone behind my back to my family to get them to give them money to pay for my rent, so to say, which was like, I was like, wow, here you have me working my ass off trying to think I'm earning my keep, and I'm confiding in you, but then you're really just going behind my back to do that. And then at one point they brought me to therapy. And I remember, which was great. I love therapy. I actually think everyone should go to therapy.
I do too.
I've done a lot of therapy in life, and I think it's amazing. And I'll never forget, though, I went to this therapist. It was this male therapist, and I was sitting there, and they were very adamant that it had to be a male therapist, which I thought was weird. And so we're sitting there, and it was probably like 20 minutes into the session, and I realized, wait, what's going on here? And I go, I literally looked at the therapist. I go, what are you trying to tell me? And he goes, well, if you continue this lifestyle, you're going to burn in the flames of hell. And I went, okay. I'm like, I got to go. So I left.
Here.
Huh?
I'm done here.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm like, I'm out. Because I was going to therapy to just try to deal with some of my issues of life, I'm not trying to pray the gay out of me. So I was like, what? And I remember I went in the car and I go, what the fuck was that? And that was one thing. And then, the family, at one point there was a disagreement on Facebook over politics, something stupid. Stupid. And the husband of the family, he deleted me on Facebook, told me, you were never part of my family and you never will be, deleted, blocked. It was done. Haven't spoken to him since that day. And I was like, well, that's all that took, was one little disagreement on Facebook about politics. And then the final straw, which you were actually there for, and I'll never forget, we were at a horse race. It was Sunday. It was Pride Festival that weekend. And, I was so excited to go. And there was a storm coming in. And I remember I ran my horse, and I think I had done so well. I think it was a slot race or something. And I was like, oh, there's a storm coming in. And she looked at me and she goes, well, that's because God wants to strike down all the gays. Okay. But you're the religious one. You're the Christian one. You're the holier than thou. And then you say that to people? What a way to put a bad taste in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience with that has just been, and then which I also found in this book, that, LGBT individuals are 4 times more likely to commit suicide, and they're 8 times more likely to commit suicide when they live in a house that rejects them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, huh. So is your judgment and your opinions, is it really worth people literally taking their own lives over it?
No.
So it was interesting. So I will say that has been the biggest turnoff. Where now, when people are religious and they say things, honestly, there's times where I'm like, ugh, it makes me almost cringe, which is obviously not a good thing to have.
No.
But it's experiences like that where it's like, ugh.
It's probably one of those moments for you that you have thought about many, many times, obviously, with good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you mention it, I do remember being there. I've probably not thought about it one time since that day.
You looked at me, you said, Ben, God's not going to strike down the gays. Go have fun.
Yeah. I'm glad I said something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a little speechless, to be honest. I think people's fear of what they don't know and don't understand causes them to say horrible things. Why? I don't know. I was thinking about that today as I was getting ready to have this conversation with you. Is why are people so afraid of something they don't understand and they don't know. You know what I mean? What is it about so many Christians that make them, I guess you're right, I mean, hate the gay community so much
Right.
that they go to such great lengths to say horrible things, to ostracize them, to give them ultimatums, kick them out of the house, you know, and
Over 6 verses.
it sounds, it's very cliche because I feel like it's in every book of someone that might take a stance like I do or what, but really truly, Ben, and anyone listening, like I really truly am so sorry that any of those things and all those things happened to you. I'm sorry that anyone, Christian or non-Christian, ever made you feel less than anything than you are. And so, yeah, that sucks.
And I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I'm tough. Like I've been through shit. So yes, it's hurtful.
Probably more hurtful at the time.
Right.
I mean, we were young.
This was years ago. Yeah.
15 years ago, probably.
But it stayed with me.
Yeah, of course it did. We're still talking about it now.
Right. But I feel like there's so many other people out there that don't have a voice or that don't have, I'm at least now especially strong enough. For someone were to say that now, I'd be like, well, fuck off. And I go live my life.
Sure.
Whereas back then, you're kind of you're lost when you're younger. When people aren't, not everyone has strong backbones or big personalities where they can just stand up for themselves.
And I want to circle back to what you were talking about and the family that you were mentioning. It's hard, Ben, because I do believe that they really did love you. I really do believe
I agree with that.
In fact, I know they did.
Yeah.
Because I do happen to know these people. And I think they meant well. It doesn't make or excuse their behavior or what they said, because I don't agree with the way that they handled it. But for me, when those things happen, I always try to interpret it through like what I do know to be true, so it doesn't excuse it or make it okay. But for me, when I have those hurtful situations related to faith or not, trying to kind of remove myself from that situation and look at it and say true things like, okay, their intentions, they meant well. Again, in my opinion, they fell short. It didn't end that way, but I do think, and again, I think that's probably an overarching statement for a lot of the ways, again, that Christians have treated people and the church have treated people. It doesn't make it okay. But I think people with good intentions often don't get to follow that out to fruition, and their own opinions, insecurities, fears get in the way of really being Jesus to people the way that they need to be to them.
I have learned though that like I said at the beginning, it's not everyone. And I learned that the hard way, because my biological father, who was a great guy, he was very religious. The only Bible I own that's in my house was a gift from him. Like he was a very, very religious person. He passed away of cancer, and towards the end of his life, before he even knew he had cancer, he tried really hard to get into my life, and he tried really hard to be a part of it and try to like really be in my life. And I was like, no. I mean, I pushed him away like no other, because I was like, I've already dealt with the first dad, the gun. I've dealt with this family. The last thing I'm going to do is now go to my religious dad and then have to come out to him and get rejected all over again. No way. And it was at his funeral that his widowed wife, she came up to me and she said, I just want you to know that Mark was his name. Mark knew that you were gay and he loved you. And holy shit, I'm going to cry on my own podcast. This is not supposed to happen. He just said that he knew and he loved me and accepted me. And at that point, it was too late. So, holy shit. Okay. This is supposed to be a funny podcast.
No, it was supposed to be what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that was the only agreement we made.
But in general, I mean, it's been a week. It's supposed to be funny and not heavy. And I never didn't think I'd be crying. But
here we are.
Yeah. But that was a reality where it was, that was tough. Because I was like, fuck. I actually did have a dad that loved me and wanted to be part of my life. And I, because of the other circumstances with people I've dealt with religion, I was like, I'm not going down that road. And then, too late.
So what did that do to you?
Well, like I said, I think it made me realize that not everyone is. That's why I started, and I was like, look, this isn't. I've experienced this from many Christians or many religious people, and I know other people have, but I know it's not everyone out there. And I think the reason I even wanted to do this podcast was so that people, if they're in the same boat or if they're struggling, maybe if you're not, if, like for someone like me, I don't consider myself very religious, but that doesn't mean close the door on someone who might be.
Right. Likewise.
Yeah.
I wrote down, and I'm sure you're familiar with who Brene Brown is.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say I'm
Yeah.
sure. Do you?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she's amazing. And something she said that I've thought about so many times this last year, I think the older I get, just conflict is so inevitable. You know what I mean? When you deal with people, like people just are misunderstood or they take things out of context. Myself, I'm mad at someone, whatever it is. And losing the art to sit down face to face with people who may have a disagreement, feel differently about things, have strong convictions about things. Brene Brown said it's really hard to hate someone up close. And I've always clung to that, and I think back to that's just kind of always been my heartbeat. Like I love diving into different from me. I always have. Like I think about, I don't know if you ever met my brother Tim. He's been in prison most of my life, and a lot of my family just didn't. It's hurtful for my family, and it's hard. I don't think they know what to do with it. And I would go visit him in prison, not because I thought it was fun or because I liked going to prison and checking in. I mean, it was uncomfortable, but like I just wanted to sit face to face with them because it's hard to hate someone up close. And I think just in general, I think we've lost that art to sit down with someone that's hurt you and tell them like, hey, this hurts. Like what's up here, and just have that conversation. It takes a lot of bravery and courage and vulnerability to do that. But I think Christian or non-Christian, I mean, I think for me, I do it because I believe that's who Jesus is inviting me to be. If you're not a Jesus follower, I would just invite you to do it because I think it's what a decent human being does. And it's what a human being that wants to be alive and have real relationships. I always also say truth is the currency of all intimate relationships. You can't have an intimate relationship with a friend, a lover, a spouse, a partner, if you don't tell them the truth. And, sometimes it's hard things. And to be able to sit in that together, I think is what brings people together.
So I have a few questions that people emailed in.
Oh, gosh.
Here we go. So
if I take all questions off about Mary, I'm done.
There's no Mary.
Okay.
I think Mary's out. If there is, we'll scratch it. I've always found the Bible confusing. So many rules on what to eat, where, or to do. How do Christians decide which rules apply today and which ones don't? Emily in Denver.
Oh, that's an easy one. So, when Jesus came, he essentially fulfilled the law. And when Christians talk about the law, essentially to not get into too much depth, but to give you a broad stroke picture, the Israelites were called to be set apart. And so they were given the law so that they would live differently, and that went back to some of the things that, what to eat, what to wear, what not to wear, these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jesus fulfilled the law. And so Christians are not under the law anymore. I mean, there are no rules about what we eat, what we don't eat, those types of things. And so
who we love.
Who we love. So Jesus was the ultimate fulfillment of the law. And so we are not under the law. I mean, the law of love, the law of Christ, the law of the Spirit. And so, I mean, when Jesus came, I mean, he did away with pretty much with that.
Jake from New York says, do you believe in miracles still today, or were they just something for biblical times? And how can someone know if something is truly a miracle?
Miracles.
Well,
what do you think?
I mean, I think because there's crazy stuff that happens all the time. Like my best friend has stage 4 breast cancer. They told her she was never going to, they predicted her, make your final arrangements, and she's cancer free. Like that to me is the doctors couldn't explain it.
Right.
I guess who made the miracle happen? I guess that's where
and I think it depends on what you call a miracle. I mean, right. I see the Lord do things in my life constantly that I'm like, that just can't be a coincidence. That can't be by happenstance. And I think the Lord is very involved in the details of our lives, and it's up to us to notice them. And then to be able to walk in those, to be able to see the miracles that he does do in my own life. And again, I think some of it depends on what you're going to define as a miracle.
And I think when I would say something like that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, so the universe, which is like in the beginning when I said whether you call it the universe or God or higher power, it's like the big, oh, the universe had my back there, or,
Right.
So I guess we do. Okay, Amanda in Dallas says, I grew up hearing a lot about heaven and hell, but I've always wondered, how does one really know if they're going to go to heaven? And is hell as scary as it sounds?
Cool.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it is. Heaven and hell are very elusive concepts, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the Bible talks about them both. For me as a Christian, salvation comes through Christ and Christ alone. That is my belief. That we are sinful people. Jesus calls us to repent for our sin, to accept Him as our Lord and our Savior, accept His forgiveness, and live a new life in Christ. And that is my belief on how we get to heaven.
What about someone who's like Jewish? They believe in God, but they don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah. I don't like to make definitive statements about other people's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easier for me to talk about what I believe and what I believe is to be true. And I think it goes back to the condemning. It's not really my place to tell you what you believe is wrong. But what I can say, and I've thought about this a lot, and this is just for all the listeners and you to interpret on your own. I don't believe that like two opposing things can be true. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, Islam and Judaism and Christianity, they all teach very, very different fundamental things. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I'm just not going to say what you believe is wrong, but I will tell you what I believe is the truth.
Okay. But if you believe in God, and then Jesus is the Son of God, so you're basically saying you got to believe in both.
Well, there's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit.
Right. Okay. Last one from Jess.
I feel like I'm doing pretty good at these.
You are. You're nailing them.
I was a little nervous about the question part.
Jess from Denver. I've always been curious. Do Christians believe in dinosaurs? The Bible doesn't mention them, but there's so much evidence they existed. How do Christians explain this? And where do dinosaurs fit into the story of creation? And what are your thoughts on evolution?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that, because my honest answer is I've literally never thought about it.
But like, you believe
in land before time, yeah.
But you believe in dinosaurs.
Yeah, I don't think you cannot believe in dinosaurs.
Right, there's bones like all over.
Again, it's true. Like I don't think you can believe, I don't think it's really debatable that dinosaurs weren't a real thing.
But what about evolution?
Of course we've evolved.
But like from monkeys?
No, I do not think we've evolved from monkeys. But of course we've evolved. And different species have evolved. I mean, that's science.
But what about, like, I remember in science, I mean, I don't know all the facts, but remember there was like Lucy, or there was like, they have like skeletons, monkeys,
apes.
Yeah, that have like slowly become more human-like.
Yeah. I guess I've really never studied it a whole lot.
Okay.
So like I said, I really just don't think I'm your guy for that question.
For that one.
Sorry, Lucy in Denver.
Jess.
She's the monkey.
Jess in Denver.
Jess, I didn't mean to call you a monkey. I'm sorry, Jess from Denver. Those are good questions, most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on here.
You bet. I had a lot of fun.
I think we cleared a lot of things up. I think that it's good. Well, apparently it was a fucking therapy session for me over here. Fine. But I think it's a good, like I said, I want people to listen to this and just leave with a different perspective. Where I'm not here trying to tell people don't believe in Jesus. I'm not trying to convince people that you have to believe in Jesus. For me personally, I think I'm, where I said in the beginning, like, I believe in a higher power. I believe that Jesus was probably a real person. I won't bring up Mary. And I want people to take away from this whatever they need.
Well, good. I hope they did. Ben and I, for the listeners, we just both agreed that we would just be ourselves. And so I hope that's what we gave you today. And, if you have questions for me personally, you're all welcome to reach out to me. I can provide my phone number, or Ben can provide, some of my social medias that you're welcome to.
Let's do social. I don't think you want to be giving.
Yeah, probably not
to people.
But you can, I'll make sure Ben knows how to get a hold of me on social media, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone further about questions they have about Jesus or faith or anything else, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyone out there, if you're in the LGBT community, if you're not, if you're just struggling, if you need help, I think Lee's a great resource. Obviously, you heard he has, a very open mind, open heart about it all. And I'm also going to link this book because I think that anyone struggling should read this book. And I'm going to put that in the show notes because it's really a fresh perspective, I think. All right. There is our topic on religion. Now let's talk about politics. Just kidding.
Oh, gosh.
All right, everyone. I will see you next Tuesday. Thank you for listening to that episode of It's Been a Week, but don't touch that dial because it's not over yet. Get ready for the after show. Been there, done that with AJ. Well, we're going to get AJ's take on whatever the fuck I just said. And we're back with Been There, Done That.
We are back again.
Someone's excited.
Well, before we get into the episode, this has been a week. It has been a week. I feel like there's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of conversation around diversity and equity and inclusion, and it's just like a lot. So I just want to put it out there that we love everybody. We embrace everybody. I know you stress that all the time, but it's just been a lot. Back to your episode, because I know that's what you want to talk about. I can't believe you cried.
I can't believe I fucking cried.
I know, but it was real, right? And like, that's important. Like, you have to, as you grow, like, make sure that those emotions come out because they're somewhere buried in there. And like, that's good that you were able to release that,
But I mean, I'm a pretty tough bitch.
I think so. But like, that's also like, that's some real shit that you were talking about.
Like, how many times have I cried in our relationship?
I mean, not a lot, but like, again, that's something pretty significant. And I think that like your vulnerability and the way that you were comfortable, and maybe it was because you were with Lee that you felt comfortable to be able to, I don't know, break through on something, I think is pretty amazing. So,
because I've told that story multiple times. Like, I've told a lot of people that story, but I've never cried.
Well, I also think in the context of your conversation, because you were talking about other things that cause pain in your life. And I think that, you are a strong person, and part of that is moving forward past pain. But, if you don't resolve sometimes the pain and you just mask it, then
the resentment.
Or, yeah. And so, when you're given that opportunity, I feel like it allowed you to hopefully heal a little bit more, right? And like, we started it when we started this, and I talked about my friend Susan, and laughter is the best medicine. Not everything is just laughing. And as much as laughter can be the best medicine, like, you also got to process these other things. And like, I'm glad that you're doing that on this. I'm glad that you're...
Well, let's not get used to the crying. I don't think that that's going to be a regular thing. I don't know. I was not expecting that. And then all of a sudden I just was like, as I was telling the story, I was like, oh my God. I was like, what's happening? And then I was like, holy shit, I'm going to cry. And then I did. It's weird.
As for your Catholic school situations, I actually was raised Catholic, and...
Sorry.
No, why be sorry? I mean, so I have my own stories. One...
Were you an altar boy?
No, absolutely not.
I wanted to be.
Probably for the wrong reasons. So I was raised Catholic. I knew that you weren't, because when you were telling me about this episode and how you were going to come on and talk about your first Holy Communion, but you didn't know they had to get confirmed first. I was like, that's not how it works. So I'm glad that you didn't share that with everyone.
The thing about Catholics, there's so many fucking rules.
Yeah, but like, religion was all about governing people. Like, that was the point of it.
But I remember when I used to go to the Catholic school and I had to go to the church, like, it was so much like stand, kneel, sit, stand, sit, kneel, sit. It's like, Jesus Christ, can we just sit here and like listen to the sermon? Why do we got to why is there so much up and down?
I mean, I loved the conversation that you both had. As someone that was raised Catholic, though, back to getting kicked out of school, what's funny is when I did CCD, which was like the stuff you do to get into First Holy Communion and confirmation, all this, you go to these classes. My mom had to teach it a couple times. I couldn't stop laughing. Like, I just could not stop laughing, and I got kicked out. Years later in college, some of my friends said, do you want to go to Ash Wednesday? And at this point, I wasn't going to church anymore, but I was open to it. I was like, yeah, I'll go to Ash Wednesday. My mom called me, and we were talking on the phone, And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to Ash Wednesday with my friends. And she's like, you are? And I said, yeah. She was like, oh, light a cigarette and put it out on your forehead. So anyways, I love the episode. I love that you're talking about stuff that probably there are people out there that have similar questions. Definitely in the gay community, some of the things that, you know, folks that aren't as accepted in their families or in maybe their religious families, like this is a great conversation for them to listen to. And Lee sounds like a really good person for them to talk to. Like he said, if people wanted to reach out, that he was there. And I love that he offered that. So
yeah. I just hope I don't get my DMs flooded with people trying to send me like verses and going crazy and being like, you're violating this.
But like that's evangelism and that's likely a possibility, and you don't have to respond. Like that's the world that we live in.
Right.
And with that being said, I think also just about it's been a week because I've had this conversation with a few people. There's so much happening in the world right now, and there's so much dissonance and so much dialogue occurring. And I think the kind of to what you just said, people are going to say what they want to say. Everyone has the opportunity to express who they are and what they feel and things that they want to say. We would hope that people do that with good morals and in love, not in hate. But the reality is people are going to do these things. And the one thing you have to remember is when you know who you are and what you believe in, then you only have to respond and participate against who that is. And if those people reach out to you and they want to share these things, let them. You don't have to sit there and respond to them. Let them say what they want to say. Maybe they have to get it off their chest and just keep it moving. Your podcast has bigger, better things to do than have people feel like they're going to come and change your opinion. If they really want to do that, apply to be on the podcast and come and do an episode.
And if you don't know how to do that, go to it'sbeenaweek.com, scroll down to the bottom and fill out the form and tell me why you should be the next guest.
I really enjoyed it. I also would like to acknowledge that it's funny when I'm like, I need a martini. I end up getting a martini. When I need merch, I end up getting merch. I have this hat on. It's something else.
Yes, for everyone listening, the merch store is now open to everyone. So you can go to it'sbeenaweek.com, click on the merch store, and there's all the fun.
Yeah, this See You Next Tuesday is quite the hat. So I feel like there's some really cool things that people need to go check out.
Do you think my history teacher is going to listen to this, Mr. Hank?
I actually am nervous about how many people either directly or indirectly are going to listen to your episodes when you keep calling people out. So it's something to consider because I think maybe your points at sometimes are valid and you're expressing things, but remember, like, you're not here to like,
I'm not here to make enemies, but
yeah,
I'm here to call out the truth. And here's the deal. Anyone is free to make their own fucking podcast and you can tell your side of the story.
I'm really intrigued to see where you're going to go with this. And I think any ways that it keeps evolving is going to be incredible. And anyone that's listening out there, if you have ideas, send them to Ben because it's amazing what you're doing. It's incredible what you've created. And I know it's a lot of work. And at this point, it's still really rewarding because you have a lot of people listening, which is amazing.
It is.
So thank you, everyone that keeps listening. And I think you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
And I'm going to keep calling people out.
You keep calling people out.
Actually, here, I'm going to call it a good, I'm going to call it a good person. The best teacher I ever had.
Yeah.
Brenda Ramin.
Oh, I met her.
Yes. I'm actually friends with her to this day. She has come stayed at our house. She was my 9th grade science teacher. She was the best teacher I ever had.
Yeah.
And still friends to this day. And this is a whole other story, but she was the first person to ever bring me to LA and helped launch my whole acting career. Okay. So shout out to Brenda. Fuck you, Mr. Hank. And all right, everyone. See you next Tuesday. What is up, everyone? I have a question for you. Have you ever done something so wild, so hilarious, or so ridiculous that your friends are still talking about it? Do you have a story that happened to you this week that are going to leave jaws on the floor? Well, here's your chance to tell it on It's Been a Week. Head over to it'sbeenaweek.com, scroll down to the bottom, and let me know why you should be the next guest. Bring me the drama, the chaos, and the laughs. I want it all. No story is too crazy, no perspective too bold, and nothing is off limits. So, let's pour a martini, spill the tea, and make a conversation to remember. Submit now, and I cannot wait to talk to you soon.